Hey there everyone, Mazarok here, and today we are going to be talking about one of my biggest pet peeves that I see at the table. Now, before we start, let me say that this is my opinion. You as a DM have every right to run the game any way you'd like. But to me, joining a game as a player, when I hear some of these rules, and they're usually all focused around the one thing that is my pet peeve, I'm usually forced to walk away in stunned disbelief that somebody thinks this is okay. And what that is handicapping classes. Now, if you want to change something about 5e D&D to fit your world, fit your setting, you have every right to do so. But to handicap classes, now, right off the bat, I'm not the biggest fan of rogues. Their sneak attack drives me up the wall, and their class structure is just, to me, not fun to play. I won't play one. I've tried to build one. I just don't see the fun in it. But I do see how other people see the fun in it. And that's the difference. I see how their sneak attack is built. It's an all or nothing gain for big damage. But if they mess up, they usually don't get a second chance unless you start going into weird optimized builds. But that's the idea behind it. It is an all or nothing class. You either succeed by a lot or your failure is a big failure. So when I see people like, how do I nerf sneak attack? You don't. It's been play tested. It's been balanced. It's okay the way that it is. Okay, there is some extra tuning that you can do to fix combat encounters without ruining sneak attack. It's the way that you need to kind of approach it at that point, where it's not how do I nerf sneak attack, but how do I make better combat encounters that last longer? Well, there's different ways to do that. You can roll the monster's HP a little bit higher if you'd like. The fixed stat is actually just the average in all the monster manual. Right beside it, you see the amount of dice, what kind of dice, and what you add on to it. So you can feel free and roll for the monster's HP if you want. And I actually find that to be kind of fun, because that way sometimes I end up with weaker ones, with stronger ones, and players get thrown off balance. Because let's say they do 20 damage to this one guy, and they're like, oh well, okay, they're kind of weak. At 20 damage, we're gonna have killed them. But then they're at like 33 on his friend who has the same stat block but just more HP because he rolled higher. They start to get worried. Things start to change. So you can really roll with that and change it, but don't nerf a class. I have seen through Facebook and social media, I have seen people ask how to nerf every class. And it's all because one person did something so incredible. They got lucky on a roll, or just the way they had set it up. It just blew the damage out of proportion and completely circumvented an encounter. How do I nurse a bard ability to persuade? It's not that you need to nerf it. Another thing is, are you looking at the skill the right way? Persuasion is not mind control. It's not. You know, I can be dead set in my beliefs on something, and somebody tries to sell me on something the opposite, but it doesn't matter how well their argument is. You're not selling me on it. It doesn't matter what they can roll a 35 persuasion roll, and you're not going to change my opinion on it. So perhaps think about your NPCs and how well could they be persuaded to do what's going on. Some monsters can't be persuaded not to fight. They just can't. I have seen everything from how do you nerf concentration? Well, one of the big things with concentration is a lot of people get those spells wrong to begin with anyway. That's actually one of the more frequent things that I see wrong. So, you're only allowed to cast one concentration spell at a time. If you cast a second, you drop your first. Pretty simple. If you get hit while casting a concentration spell, you have to roll a Constitution saving throw. If you fail that check, which is a 10 or half of the damage, whichever is more, You stop concentrating on the spell. You straight up lose it. I have lost some great spells that I had cast 1 or 2 rounds in from a botched roll. But that happens. It's the dice, and that's how the game rolls. You don't need to make concentration checks even harder just because. So my first thing with that is, no matter what you're trying to do, don't nerf the player's abilities. Now make sure that the player's abilities are being played within the confines that they're supposed to be played. Because a lot of people forget about concentration checks. Even I do in the game. I forget that players are concentrating on a spell when I hit them sometimes. It happens. It's not one of those rules that's fully embedded in the game, but it's not fully embedded in our minds yet. So we tend to forget about that a lot. But so my suggestion for all of this is, if you're saying the words, how do I nerf this ability? How do I nerf this class? Don't. It's been balanced. It's played. It's built the way that it is. It's not a problem. Don't nerf it. Make your encounters harder. And by encounters, I mean make your exploration encounters harder. Make your social encounters more difficult. Make combat harder. That's the easy one to do. Add HP, add AC, kind of change things around a little bit. Add some armor. It's really not difficult to make combat harder. Add more enemies. Done. You thought 6 goblins was going to be enough? Add 9. Add a total of 9, not add another 9 onto the 6. But I mean, either or, it depends how powerful your party is. Maybe add the whole 9. But bring it back on yourself. So instead of saying, how can I get diminishing return? How can I diminish a player's ability to play their class and make them feel bad because they're just trying to play their class? I mean, why wouldn't you? Work on your encounters. If someone is just rolling through all your social encounters, find ways to make them more difficult or more challenging. Work on your improv a little bit. Make more backstories for your NPCs. This is something that I've started doing a little bit more, and I found that my social encounters are a little bit better, because it's not just here's Boblin the Goblin, interact with him. Well, of course the bard's gonna have his way with him or her. I mean, really, but that sounded way more dirty than it had to, but it also kind of works, so I'm gonna stick with it. But in going back to the earlier point about the bard, is if you're trying to convince me of a deep inherent, otherwise on a completely deep and inherent belief that I have, it's not gonna work. Well, you can apply that to your NPCs as well. Maybe there is a bard that's hitting on a girl, but she is deeply religious and deeply monogamous and is married. Has been this thought process her entire life, and there is no taking her off that path, and there is nothing anyone can do, and no roll good enough for her to change her mind. Well, you're adding depth to an NPC, which is huge, but now you're making it so your players can fail. And when they can fail, it can lead to better scenarios as well. Maybe he falls in love with her and he wants to try and win her over. I don't know. But instead of just, you roll a 19, you roll a 20 plus your plus 11, you get whatever you want anyway. He can't, because you can't convince someone who has a deep inherent belief and moral code on something to say otherwise, and there's no persuasion check in the world that can change that. So take that different mentality and apply it to you. Instead of saying, how do I nerf this? How do I make it more say, how do I make it more challenging for my players? Because changing how a class plays and handicapping them through whatever means, because most likely you got screwed by somebody. That's what happened. You didn't just read the PHB and say, that's too broken, I'm gonna nerf it. Something happened in game. Well, did you fully understand the rules in game? Did you fully understand the rule that you're handicapping beforehand? Because I have made the point to DMs before about why they're handicapping the wizard class or this class with their insane checks, and they say, well, the concentration checks, or this is too broken because. I'm like, all right, how do you know the actual rule for 5e? Like, please explain that to me. What's your personal view on what the actual 5e rule is? And it turns out it was completely wrong to begin with. And then when I tell them what the 5e rule actually is, and here's the framework, and then, oh, that's not broken at all. See how you're being very mean to your players now, and how probably why you complain you never have any wizards or sorcerers that say they want to join your game, because it makes no sense to play one. But what you can change is yourself. What you can improve is yourself. And when you do that at the table, everybody wins. When your encounters get more fun, dynamic, and challenging, doesn't matter whether it's combat, social, or exploration, when you up that game, everyone at your table has more fun. Everyone is better off for it. But when you nerf someone's a class ability because whatever reason you have, you just don't like it, you have less fun because you're now having to come up with an ability to nerf, unless you're kind of sadistic that way. And then your player is definitely not having as much fun because he can't fulfill what his class says it can do as a general rule, and how it's built and play tested. Of course that's not fun. So shift that mentality over. I'll repeat this again because it needs to be said, and it drives me up the wall whenever I see DMs do this. Now, there is a difference here, because if you're attempting to kind of nerf a general core function in the PHB that affects every player evenly, because, I don't know, you want maybe more gritty realism, magic's dampened in your world, or something, there's not a lot of as many, whatever it is, that's fine, as long as every class and race gets treated equally, because then that way you're not handicapping someone that just wants to play a specific class. Oh, the weapons rust out so much more quicker, and you can never find anyone to buy swords and shields and stuff from. Who's gonna say I want to play a fighter at that point? No one, because it makes no sense to. But if that's something that happens generally along equipment and not just weapons, and it is kind of a bigger survival aspect to deal with among every class, and every class gets that same horrific survival element, let's say, that's fair. That's cool. That's a new element that everyone has to try and get over. But it's when you handicap players, player classes in specific, and make it so there's literally no reason for anyone to play one in your campaign. That's dumb. Straight up. Now, you can go ahead and you can disagree with me all you want. Tell me how I'm wrong in the comments, but I am ready to stand on this hill and die on it, because there is a difference between the two. There really is. Making nerfs to a general core as a whole is fine. It adds a whole new aspect, as long as all of your players agree with it, of course, are well known at the table and agree to play with those rules. But in my opinion, nerfing specific classes just because, and handicapping certain classes just because, is dumb. It is a massive pet peeve of mine, and I wish it would end. Now, again, we're going to end this with saying this is my opinion. You have every right to feel to the contrary, and just disregard this video as a whole. Plain and simple. Now, I stream on Twitch every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we play Rime of the Frostmaiden at 7 p.m. Eastern every Sunday. Now, I did suffer a rib injury on last Sunday, which kind of hampered my ability to stream and make videos, so some of these are coming out late. I am trying to be on time, so thank you very much for the wait and you know, watching this video as is. If you would like to support this channel directly, the Patreon link is in the description box below. It goes a very, very long way. And as well, like, comment, subscribe. It lets me know that, you know, what I'm doing is for the good and you guys are enjoying it. Aside from that, I hope your next session is a fantastic one, and have yourselves a good day.